For this demonstration, we'll be using VCarve Pro 8.5. The tools that we're going to use to do this demonstration are available also in VCarve Desktop and Aspire. So we're going to make the assumption that you've already gone to Design&Make.com and have downloaded the Winebar No.2 project. So it's already installed and ready for you to use. Now the first part of this video, we are going to show you how to use one of the models to create a very basic wine bottle coaster with some V-carving on it. And then we're going to take that basic layout and we're going to embellish it with some of the other models that come along with the project. So we're going to open a brand new version of VCarve Pro and we're going to create a new file. Now we're going to go ahead and make this file 10 inches by 10 inches. This is going to be our job space. For right now, we're going to use 1/2 inch as our material thickness, but later on that can be adjusted and we will have to adjust that a little bit later on, but for now that's totally fine. Our datum will be set to the center and we're going to use a very high resolution. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. We're going to move over to our clip art tab and we're going to go to our Design and Make folder. Now of course, like I mentioned earlier, I'm making the assumption that you've already purchased and downloaded and installed the Winebar No.2 project. So you've got all 11 individual models available to you along with the assembled layout, which we won't be using for this, but it's good to note that the assembled layout is an actual wine bottle coaster sized appropriately for a standard size wine bottle. So the recess in it is actually 4 inches across when you bring it in to your software, as long as you don't modify the dimensions any. And that's about the right size to accept a 3 to a 3 1/4 inch wine bottle. There's a little extra wiggle room there so that when you're putting your wine bottle down, you don't hit the ridge and end up having it topple over. So we're going to go ahead and use, for this demonstration, the first part of this demonstration, the wine bottle coaster #1. So we're going to double click on that, and that will bring in that model into our job space. Now, we're going to flip over to our 3D view for a second and we're going to take a look at this. This is a very flat model. Now, if you chose to create this first layout, then there are much more efficient ways of machining it than using a 3D toolpath. But we need to show you this to make sure that you understand how to use this same model to create the recess for the wine bottle. And then once we get through that, then we can add to that or build upon those tools. So we're going to go ahead and look straight down that again, and we are going to go to our modeling tab and we're going to make sure that this is the proper size for what we need. So for starters, we're going to actually click on the drawing tab and we're going to size this object up to be the appropriate dimension that we want. So we're going to go ahead and make this 7 inches across and we're going to hit apply. So now it's 7 inches round. We had the X and Y, link X and Y clicked on, and the auto Z scale is on as well. So those are pretty much standard settings, but in case you happen to shut those off, make sure they're turned on so that your width and height are the same. So let's close that. And now we need to make sure that the shape height of this is appropriate for the thickness that we need in order to accept the recess that we're going to put in there. So we're going to go ahead and go to our modeling tab and we're going to use the wrench here, the properties dialog, and we're going to make sure that this is set to be 0.35 of an inch. The shape height of that particular model is 0.35 of an inch. That'll make sure that it's thick enough so that when we put our recess in there, that's fine. Now we accessed these the component properties from the modeling tab, but in the future what we're going to be using is this little button right here at the bottom. Once you have an object selected or a component selected and you see the control handles show up, then there'll be a blue button at the bottom that you can click on and bring up what we call your floating properties dialog. So it has all of, or a lot of, the same options that are in your component properties, but they're just condensed into this nice convenient little floaty deal here that works really, really well. So we're going to close that down and we'll close this down. Now we're going to bring in our model to create the recess for the bottle, and again, like I had mentioned before, we're going to reuse the wine bottle coaster again. Now when you bring it in, you can't see it because it's actually being merged inside of the one we had there previously. So if we go to our modeling tab, you'll see that there's actually 2 models in here, and the one that's selected is the second one that we brought in. It always builds up from the bottom up. So this is the first wine bottle coaster we brought in and we sized, and this is the second one we brought in. So we're going to rename this just so we don't get confused in the future. We're going to right click on that, and we're going to go down to rename, and we're going to call this REC recess. And there we are. So now we're going to know there's an obvious difference between the two namings here in case we get a bit confused. We're going to select that one, and we're, instead of going to the drawing tab and clicking on the set selected object size, we're just going to press T on the keyboard, and that will bring up our set size dialog, and we're going to set this to be 4 inches, again making sure we have the link X and Y together and the auto Z scale on, and we're going to click apply, and that'll make our recess that we want. Now you'll notice that our recess is still being merged into our larger wine bottle coaster, and that's not going to work for us because we want it to actually be subtracted away from our original model. So we're going to right click on this, combine mode, and subtract, and now we'll see that we actually have a recess now in our coaster. That's not nearly deep enough for what we need. So let's just go ahead and correct that. We're going to select that, click on the floating properties dialog, and we're going to make this 1/4 inch. So that means our recess will be 1/4 inch deep, and the difference between the shape height of our actual large coaster and the recess is actually going to be 0.1, which gives us a little bit of extra material at the base of this. Now that's good for right now, but in the future we're actually going to increase that by adding leaving a bit of material at the back of our project so we can thicken that up a little bit, because that's not quite enough, I don't think, to hold our bottle. We're going to close that down now. And we're going to make sure that this is centered in our job space. So we're going to press F9 just to make sure it's centered, and you'll see it was off center just slightly. So we're going to center that up. And now we're going to go ahead and look straight down on our project, and holding down our shift key, we're going to drag this up to here because we want some space down here to add some VCarving in here, some flat area. So let's just go back to our drawing tab. We're going to go to our 2D view. We're going to press F on the keyboard to fit this to our screen, and we're going to create some text. And we're going to create the text. Let's think this is maybe for a wedding. So we're going to put in JENNIFE, Jennifer and Edward. And we're going to make their wedding date September the 12th, 2016. And let's hope that that is a weekend, because I'm not quite sure. That's just a guess. And we're going to make sure that's centered. We're going to use the Pristina font, and we're going to click apply. We're going to close that down. Now we're going to move that down to the bottom here. Perfect. So that looks pretty nice. Now that's our very basic layout, and why I went through that was just to show you that we needed to use that wine bottle coaster model twice in order to give you the recess. And from here on out, we'll be using that wine bottle coaster to create the recess for all of the projects. And if you decide in the future to create a candle holder out of this project, much like we show on the website here, if you scroll down, you'll see there's a candle holder here. The center socket is actually the coaster, just subtracted, and the shape height is exaggerated so that you actually can create a socket. And we have all the instructions on the website here to create the proper size socket for a candle, depending on whether you're making a pillar candle holder or a tapered candle holder. So all of it's there for you in case you want to do that. So let's go back to VCarve. And now let's update this with a little bit more, make it a little bit more interesting, because like I said, right now this is very basic. To machine this with 3D toolpaths probably wouldn't be very efficient. You can do it much quicker by just using a round over bit, do a quick little profile cut, pocket out a hole that's the right diameter, do a little V-carving, and then you would be done. So this really isn't a very efficient way of doing this. But if we add some some grapes and some grape leaves to this, then of course you can't use that super fast machining. So you're going to have to do something a little different. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and adjust our text, and we're going to make sure our text goes inside of the recess. That'll be kind of neat, because when the coaster isn't in use, then it's a nice little keepsake for their wedding date. So let's just edit that text. And we're going to go ahead and press enter. We're going to delete out the and sign, and we're going to type in the word and we're going to go ahead and have 4 lines. Click OK or apply and then close, and we're going to move this now. Holding down the shift key, we can drag it up to the center. Now there's a lot of space in between these lines of text, so let's just go ahead and tighten that up a little bit. We're going to use the edit text spacing to curve, or sorry, edit text spacing and curve. And if we hover in between the lines of text, you'll see that my pointer turns to line and line, so we can adjust the spacing between that. If I click it without holding down the shift key, it subtracts space. If I hold down the shift key and do it, it adds space. So we're going to let go of the shift key. We're just going to snuggle those in there a bit better. And be careful, because sometimes when it sneaks in, you end up hovering over top of your letters. And if you click in an actual word, then what happens is you lose some space between your letters, and that might not be so great. So maybe zooming in might be a good option for you. And we're going to go ahead and take out some more space there, and take out some more space here. We're going to take out a little more space here. Oops, I did what I said not to do. And then we're going to go back to our pick tool. I'm going to select that, and we're going to nudge it in this. We're just going to eyeball that in the center. And I think that looks pretty nice the way it is. So now, to accommodate some more models, we have a couple different options. One is we could easily just go ahead to our clip art tab, and we could add on to the surface of this some grapes if we wanted to. Just go ahead and size that down. We're going to put that here maybe. We turn it slightly. Pop that in like that. And there we could just basically add some grapes. You're going to have to change the combine mode. So go to modeling, right click on that, combine mode, and add. And now we've added some grapes to the surface of our wine bottle coaster. So we could build on that if you wanted to, but that's not going to give us the best use of our material thickness. And we included into this project this little guy right here, which is called a wine coaster recess number 1. And what that will do is it will create, when it's subtracted away from a surface, it will actually give you a little bit of recess that now you can go ahead and bring some models in and tuck into that. And then that allows you to give some more shape height so that you can get a little bit more shape and a little more definition from your projects inside that. Along with, this is kind of neat because it'll make it look like the leaves are actually coming out of the coaster and on to the surface of your coaster, which is going to be kind of a neat effect. So we're going to go ahead and delete out the grapes just by selecting it and press delete on the keyboard. Let's go ahead and bring in our wine coaster recess. That's going to be way bigger than what we need. So let's go to our 2D view so we can see a little bit better. Now the way we're going to do this is we're going to size this down so that it fits just nicely. It cradles that wine bottle coaster just nicely in there with a little bit of space. So using your cursor keys and the sizing handles here, we can work away at making sure that it just kind of cups that just nicely, and that's what it does. So now we can take that and we can size that up to be the size we want, and then we're just going to go ahead and move it down a little bit so that this distance is pretty even all the way around, and that looks pretty nice right there. And then we'll flip to our 3D view. Again, we need to change the combine mode of this. We're going to go to our modeling tab. We're going to right click on that, change our combine mode to be subtract. And now we have a nice little recess there that we can go ahead and fit some models into. Now I don't think that that's quite deep enough for what we want. So let's just go ahead and bring up our floating properties dialog again. And we're going to change this recess to be about 0.183. Now that number just comes out of me messing around, working very organically with these models so that things work well visually for what I want to have done. So we're going to go with that for now. We might come back and change that if it doesn't work for us, but I think that's pretty good. Let's look straight down. Now we're going to do a little bit of work with our layers over here, and this is mainly just so that we can keep a little more organized our layout, but also we can make use of one of the new features of version 8.5 of VCarve Pro. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to rename this level. We're going to call this coaster. and the recess. Okay, and then we're going to right click again, and we're going to insert a new layer, and we're going to call this, we're going to rename this once we select it, details. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to add all of the details, all of the grapes and the leaves that we're going to do are going to end up being on this layer. So let's just go ahead and bring in our first leaf that we're going to use, which is going to be the grape leaves number 2. And we're going to position it right down here at the bottom of that recess. So we're going to grab our shift key and we're going to drag it down. Holding down the shift key while we drag means that it's going to stay nice and straight up and down. It's going to follow along. It's going to constrain that. And we're going to size it down. I'm going to work with these very organically. And all I'm looking at, I'm not looking at the way that it works with other models right now. I'm just looking at the size of it right now to make sure I get the size that I want. And we're going to mess around with the other stuff in a bit. Perfect. That seems about right. Maybe a little bit smaller. Just use our cursor keys to nudge it up. Let's zoom in a little bit. Flip over to our modeling tab. Now what we want to do is look at the way our layers are working together. First of all, the details level is being added to the coaster and recess level, and that's why you'll see that our leaf is kind of wrapping over top of that and it looks kind of funny. What we actually want to do is right click on this level and we want to use the combine mode of merge. Now our leaf goes away. That's because it's tucked down. If I select it, it's tucked inside of our coaster, which means it's not, you can't see it. So if we sort of think ahead about how this is going to be all laid out, that anything that I decide to put inside of this recess needs to at least have a base height of that's equal to the depth of the bottom of this trough, we'll call it. So if I run my mouse over top of this, down here in the bottom right hand corner, you'll see a Z height. So 0.167 is the height of this flat area. So if I go ahead and use this new feature that's available in version 8.5 of VCarve Desktop, VCarve Pro, and Aspire, and I go up here to the properties of this particular level, I can give anything that goes on this level a base height. So we're going to change this to 0.167, which is equal to the base of this, and I'm going to click close, and you'll see that it pops right up into place because it's automatically saying that this level is now 0.167 tall, anything that's on there. If I go ahead and select this grapes and I look at my floating properties, it's not reflected here in the base height. It's not. So it is actually set up inside of here, and if I hover over top of that, you'll see that the base Z is set to 0.0167. So that's just a good little tip, and that's going to be handy later, and well, it's going to be handy for the rest of this layout. So now let's go ahead and get this leaf to fit in here properly. So we're going to go ahead and change the shape height of this to be 1/4 inch. Again, I'm just guessing at this. It doesn't quite fit in there, but I like the way it fills in the space. So let's just go ahead and tilt that. I'm going to tilt from here to there. We're going to tilt that about, I don't know, 3 degrees maybe we'll try. That's pretty close. Let's make it 4 degrees. That's not bad. And then I do see a little bit of a problem. I want to tuck some things underneath that grape leaf. So I want to make sure that I have a little extra base height on this so I can tuck things under there. So let's just go ahead and add a bit of base height to it. I'm just going to go with 0.1. Let's see what we get with that. That looks pretty good. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Maybe we can actually, now that we've done that, we can change this tilt a little and bring it down a little bit. That looks pretty good. Great. So let's add a little bit more to that. Let's go to our clip art tab. Let's bring in our grapes. We're going to look straight down on that. And again, seeing as we've added that base height to this level, it actually appears like it's actually in there where it belongs now, which is really quite nice. So I can go ahead now and rotate that around. Kind of fit that in there where I think it belongs. What I'm looking at is just the way these play with each other and make sure they play nice, and that looks pretty good. I might just change the shape height a bit to be 0.19, just see what we get. Yeah, pretty happy with that. That looks great. So now what we want to do is we want this to be, this coaster to be symmetrical and for ease of use and also time saving, but I think it's going to look quite nice being symmetrical. So we want to copy these grapes across the center line horizontally in our layout. So to do that, we're going to hold down our Control key, which says make a copy. We're going to hold down our Shift key, which says across the center line, and we're going to press, while we have those two pressed down, or held down, we're going to press the H key, which tells VCarve Pro to copy it horizontally or to flip it horizontally. So we're flipping it horizontally across our center line of our project, and there it is. So that's Control, Shift, and H, just to help you out again. That looks really nice. Let's go ahead and bring in our second grape leaf now. And we're going to go ahead and size that down. Now the nice thing about this grape leaf is it's got that nice curl on it. So we can actually use that to our advantage by making it look like it's kind of bending up because it's being, it's trying to fit its way through our recess here. And we want to leave enough space in there between this edge and the edge of our leaf that our cutter is going to get in there a little bit. And just enough to make a little bit of a recessed shape in there. That looks great. Now we're going to need to do a couple things. I think we're going to need to add a little extra base height to it so we can get above some of that. So let's just go ahead and add in a base height of 0.1. See what we get. That looks pretty nice. And then we're going to tilt it like we did the other one. So we're going to click tilt. We're going to add in our two anchor points, one anchor point here and one out there. So it's going to tilt between those 2 points. And we're going to tilt that, let's say 3 degrees again. See what we get. Now it needs to be more than that. So let's make it 4 degrees. No, not enough still. Let's make it 6 degrees. And let's just take a look. Roll it up on its edge. Are we happy with that? I think it looks pretty neat. So let's look back down straight onto that again. And we're going to go ahead and now we're going to take and we're going to copy this grape leaf. Now you'll see I'm having a trouble getting a hold of that grape leaf. If you double click on it, it'll select. Now let's just say you're having trouble because things are layered up too much. You can't click on the model you want or the component that you want. Then if you hover over it without anything selected and you right click with your mouse, it will bring up a list of components that are underneath where you right clicked. So I can go ahead and just select grapes out of that, click it again, grab it. While I'm moving it, hold down the Control key because I want it to copy and then let go approximately where I want it to be. And now I can go ahead and size that, rotate that around, fit that in where I need it to be. And that looks pretty slick right there, I think. I'm just getting it to kind of finish up. Didn't want that blank space there. I could have used any models. I could have used some of these grapevine models if I wanted to in there, but I thought maybe having the grapes in there would be rather nice. And again, let's just go ahead and make this 0.8 for shape height. Looks really nice. And I'm happy with that. So now what we want to do, again, making this symmetrical, we may as well go ahead and copy these two across our project. So we're going to, having trouble selecting that, so I'm going to off select everything, right click, and I'm going to click grape leaves, hold down my Shift key, and hopefully get the grapes. Nope, so I can't quite get it that well. So I'm going to go over to my modeling tab, and I can do all that from here too. So I can go ahead and select my grape leaves number 3, hold down my Shift key, and find the grape leaves right there. You and you, shoot. Hold down the Control key, not the Shift key. If I hold down the Shift key, it selects all the models between the two that I've selected, but I actually want to Control Shift it. So Control will let me select individual in any order I want. Click them again, Control Shift and H, and it should copy them across to our project like it did. Beautiful. Looks great. That's wonderful. Now if we wanted to present this to our customer to see what it looks like, or when we want to email them a nice picture, we go up and go View. We could use the new shadow shading and then View, and we could not draw our modeling plane, and then you could go to View and save out your image, save shaded image, and email that off to a customer for their approval. But seeing as we can't even see our VCarving in there right now, with this particular layout, you could just tell them that the VCarving will be there, or you could send them off a preview of your tooling, which would probably be a little bit better. And that's what we're going to do next. We're going to show you how to do some basic tooling on this. Now you need to keep in mind the feeds and speeds of your machine, the material thickness, and the cutters you're using. What I'm going to show you is just very basic, and you shouldn't use these as being the law for your machine, okay? So let's just go ahead now, and we're going to put back on our modeling plane, and we're going to go ahead and turn off our shadow shading. Not that we have to, but we're just going to do that. Now we're going to go ahead and hit page up on our keyboard, and that's going to make sure that we see both our 2D view and our 3D view. And we're going to go ahead to our drawing tab, and we are going to switch to our tool paths. So the way we're going to machine this is we're going to do a roughing pass, a finishing pass, a VCarve pass, and a profile cut to cut this out. So it'll be 4 individual tool paths. We're going to be using the same tool to do our roughing as we do our profile cut. So really you're only going to need 3 different tools for this particular project. So let's go ahead and start off by doing our roughing. So seeing as we haven't set up our material, then it's going to want us to do that. And right off the bat you're going to see a big red error here. When we first set up our project, if you remember, or our job, excuse me, we had told it to use a 1/2 inch piece of material. Well, if you look here, our model thickness is actually 0.69. So we need to either set our model to be a little bit thinner, which we can do right here by hitting this button. We could change it to fit inside of our material, or what we can do is choose to use a little thicker piece of material. In this case, I'm going to choose to use a little bit thicker piece of material. We're going to use a 1/4 inch piece of material instead. You'll see that the error's gone away, and that leaves me with a little bit of extra material that I can choose where to put it, either at the top or the bottom of my layout. If I had, if I was sure that I was using an uneven piece of material, or even if there was any worry of that, what I might want to do is put my gap at the bottom and change this to be like 0.3, and that will leave me a little bit of extra material at the top so that I'm machining that away, and it'll make sure that I don't miss any details or anything like that on the top. So maybe we'll go ahead with that just as a precaution. And then we're going to, the rapid Z's, of course you set that for your machine. They look pretty good for now. And we're going to click OK. And we're going to start our roughing pass. So we're going to use an end mill, a 1/4 inch end mill. We're going to use our model boundary. So we're going to let VCarve Pro decide where the boundary is that we're going to use. And we're going to make sure our boundary offset is a 1/4 inch, and we're going to change our allowance to be 0.04. And we're going to go ahead and calculate that. And then we're going to preview our visible toolpaths. And we always suggest that you preview your visible toolpaths as you go, and if things are not working like you expect, then you should go in and make some edits. Okay? And this is exactly what I thought was going to happen. It looks really good, so that's great. Let's just close that down. And let's go ahead and do our finishing pass. So we're going to use a 1/8 inch ball nose end mill, which is great. We're going to use the model boundary again. We're going to offset that the same amount we did with our roughing pass. And we're going to use a raster toolpath, and we're going to go ahead and calculate that. Let's preview that. That looks exactly what I expected. Remember, I left that little gap in here, so my tool is getting in there nice. I could have left a little bit more of a gap in here, but maybe when you're laying out yours, you'll do that. And this is what's so great about these previews, is you can go in and go, I might want to just make that little change right there. Let's close that down. Let's go ahead and do our VCarving. So we're going to select the text that we want to VCarve. We're going to go to our VCarving. We're going to go ahead and leave this the way it is. So start depth is 0, no flat bottom, and then none. We're going to use a 60-degree V-bit, which is going to be quite nice. And we're going to make sure that we project the toolpath onto our 3D model. In this case, there's no contours or anything there where it's going to lay that V-carving on. But if there was, this would make it so that it would follow those contours. Also, I'm not quite sure what the start depth is right there, so I'm not going to be messing around with missing that. So we're just going to project that onto that, and we'll calculate that. Let's preview the visible toolpath. It looks quite nice. Let's close that down. Now the last toolpath is going to be our profile cut. In order to create a profile cut, we're going to need to have a vector that goes all around the outside of our of the border, the outside border of our layout. In this case, it's only just a circle, so that's pretty easy. But if some of these leaves happen to protrude past the border, then we'd have to go and create a vector. And I'm going to show you how to create a vector easily for just this round circle. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring up our drawing tab again. We're going to go and we're going to pin that down. We're going to go to our modeling tab. We're going to select, and you want to select any models that make up the border. In this case, there's only one. It's the wine bottle coaster number 1. And we're going to go ahead and create an outline. You probably didn't see it do much, but what it did is it added an outline to the outside of this, and that's that purple line. And we're going to use that for our profile cut. Let's just go ahead and unpin our modeling tab. And we're going to use the 1/4 inch end mill. Oh, sorry, we need to go set up our cutting depth. So in this case, we know that we've gone down at least 0.6 into our material because that was the thickness of our model, 0.6 something. I don't remember what it was exactly. And then we want it to go down the full depth of our material, which is another 0.15. So these two numbers added together should equal the thickness of your material. If they don't equal that, then you're going to end up having some material left at the bottom of your profile cut. And if it's too much, it's going to give you an error and say that the numbers don't match up. So you need to make sure they add up to the thickness of your material. We're going to use a 1/4 inch end mill, and we are going to use outside the line. You'll see that it's going to go ahead and do 2 passes around this, which is great. If we decided, just as an aside, if we decided we were going to make this first one at 0 and this one at 0.75, you'll see that it's going to take 6 passes to do that. And that's kind of silly because we've already removed some of the material around the outside. So we're not going to do that. We're going to make this 0.6, 0.15. It's going to save you some time. We're only going to do 2 passes. We're going to go ahead and add some tabs. These tab thicknesses are pretty good. Length 1/4 inch, thickness 1.25. That's going to be nice, and that will allow us to have enough material behind that it will stay in place. And we're going to go ahead and edit those tabs. We're going to add the tabs. You'll see in our 2D view that VCarve Pro has decided where they're going to be. You can move those around if you'd like to find a better spot for them. Frankly, they're in a good spot. I'm just going to move them to left, right, up, and down. These are a great position. If your model happen to have some weird cupping going on, then you might want to move these out of that weird, hard to get areas, because then when you go to cut this out of your board, you're going to have to do a little bit of finishing, and that's just no fun. So you may as well just put them in nice convenient spots. I'm going to click close, scroll down, and we're going to say calculate. Oh, I've got a problem. It says here material thickness is 0.75, maximum tool depth is 0.76. So we're going to change that. I put the wrong number in there, 0.15. It was good that it showed me that. Let's recalculate that. Now it's happy. And you'll see that if I zoom in on the tooling here that it's decided, you'll see that it's actually putting the tab in where it belongs. Let's preview that visible tool path, and it cuts through, leaving those tabs there. So now you can go ahead and cut that out of your piece of wood. So a couple things that I'd like to point out. One is that, like I said to you before, I probably would have gone in after looking at my preview of my tool paths and maybe nudged this leaf out a little bit farther and this leaf out a bit farther, so my tool might have gotten in there a bit better. That's kind of nice. That would be nice. And also, looking at this, knowing I had a little bit more material, I actually could have made this recess a little bit deeper, which might have made it a little more stable as a wine bottle coaster, and also may have given it a nicer balance. But overall, I'm pretty happy with that, and I think it would be a nice little wedding gift. Now, don't stop at a wedding gift. This could also be an anniversary gift. You could change up the text to say, just add wine. This would be a great gift for any different occasion. Important note, if you plan to create tooling and run it on your CNC, make sure that you use values for the material setup and for the parameters of each tool path that are safe and appropriate for your CNC machine, the tooling you have available, and whatever material you are planning to use for your project.